Hi, can everyone hear me now? Again, this is Tim Bauma from Canada. Just want to see if do a sound check before I get into the presentation. Are we good? I think yes, yes, I can. I can barely hear you. More importantly, can you hear me? Then if you can hear me, then I can do the presentation. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing. Can you hear me? Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I can't. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check. Okay, great. So let me share my screen here. I just want to make sure. Let me share my entire screen. Okay, can you see the presentation there? Oops. Cancel. Just okay. So I will go through my presentation very quickly, and then we can open it up for discussion or questions. Just very at a high level, I want to give you an overview of what's happening in Canada regarding digital identity. My goal here is to increase your awareness of what we are doing, and I'm sure there will be opportunities to continue the discussions. First of all, I want to give you a sense of the Canadian vision for digital identity. Canada is a federation. We have 13 provinces and territories. We also have the federal government, so that's 14 separate jurisdictions with distinct legislation and authorities. What we are trying to do for Canadians, regardless of where they live in Canada, is to give them choice. And choice in terms of digital identity is being able to use any identity partner. If you're in a province, using your province for your identity. Federally, for passports, for example, could be your identity partner. Second, we want to give choice on enabling any device. We know that mobile is the predominant way of doing things today, but we see there are other channels opening up, such as voice-based assistants like Alexa, Siri, but also some emerging capabilities like connected cars, for example. Thirdly, we want to enable any platform. We recognize that in addition to government platforms, there are the payment platforms. There are other platforms, again, that are emerging with like social media. There could be other platforms with connected cars, for example. We want to have the flexibility to take advantage of those different platforms. And then finally, we want to have the ability that any service can be delivered through the previous three components. Again, what we're trying to do is develop a very modular architecture. There will be never any one single identity system within Canada. Rather, it will be an ecosystem of provinces, territories, and vendors. And the way that we are going to do that is being focused on standards and coming up with a standardized way to assess programs and technologies so that we can actually trust them. This slide here, lots of detail, but we've been at the policy development work for well over 15 years. This goes back to 2006, but earlier than that, in earnest, I think we started back in 2004. We started developing our strategy and policy. We are now in 2019, and we've actually have had our most recent Treasury Board policy approved, which I'll go into detail. And so we've got a lot of prior work that we've been developing over the past 15 years. Um, I work for the Government of Canada, which is the federal government, and we do have policy authorities around the federal departments and agencies. We just introduced a new policy as of July 1st, a directive on identity management, and we added two new policy definitions into the directive on identity management. One is trusted digital identity, and the other definition is trust framework. And these two definitions are very important to enable us to accept what we are calling trusted digital identities from the provinces, the territories, but also from other countries. We are in discussions with the European Union. We're also talking with the Digital Nine, which I believe Mexico is a part of as well, so we could actually mutually recognize digital identities. So what that means is that if you've registered, for example, in the province of Alberta, and you have your digital identity issued to you, not only could the Government of Canada rely on that and provide services, but conceivably, if we have an agreement with another country, it could be used in other countries as well. And it's really to enable the individual to actually get services across borders in a safe and trusted manner. Just in a nutshell, these are some of our new requirements that we have in our policy. Quite happy to send you the drafts, but this is the key policy requirement that we have in our federal instrument: accepting trusted digital identities provided through an approved trust framework as an equivalent alternative to in-person interactions through an assessment of the following processes. And then we list out the processes that we are assessing. What's important here is that we're recognizing that we are going digital, and that those digital interactions, or how you digitally present yourself, can be as good or better than presenting yourself in person. Recognizing there are different threats, there are different threat actors, but if we do this right, we can actually enable individuals to present themselves digitally without having to go to an office or a federal department. Canada is a very large country, the second largest country in the world in terms of square kilometers, but we only have a relatively small population of about 36 million. So we really have to focus on developing remote types of processes and channels. The Pan-Canadian Trust Framework, we are working on an assessment process to actually accept trusted digital identities, and we've broken that down into some very key pieces that we are assessing. Number one, are you a real person? Do you actually exist in the first place? It might sound obvious, but when you're dealing with a large country and digital channels, you have to make sure you can tie something back to that birth registration event or to that immigration event. Sounds easy, it isn't. There's a lot of fraud there. The second is what we call credential assurance. Is it the same person when someone is using a username password or their mobile phone or whatever type of technology or digital technology? Is it actually the same person that's using it as to whom it was registered? And again, we're seeing issues around like SIM jacking, theft of subscriber identity module chips, for example. And so that's a big issue. And finally, the third piece is, do we have the individual's consent to provide us with that identity information? And at the bottom is the component of, is it being delivered through a trusted infrastructure? Going back to that slide that I had earlier, was that we want to enable any platform. We realize that the payment providers, the banks, are developing new capabilities. The credit card companies, Visa, MasterCard, are developing new platforms. There are some like brand new platforms that are focused on digital identity. We have one in Canada called Verified Me, but you've probably heard in the news that Facebook is developing one as well. Whether these will be used in the long run, we don't know yet, but we want to have the option to actually use these platforms if they become viable and available. And really, the Pan-Canadian Trust Framework, what we're developing, it's a set of rules to enable us to trust and assess these platforms as well as these jurisdictions that are providing us with digital identity. Coming to our vision, we want to have this trusted digital identity ecosystem. In this diagram here, you see the 13 provinces and territories, but we also see, like the European Union, there could be banks, there could be telcos, there could be other countries. It is not a single system per se. Like you as an individual, you probably use a computer with a telco or with a service provider. You have your mobile phone with a telco. There's only one you, but you have many devices and many services that you want to use. And we just want to make sure that we enable those choices through a standards-based ecosystem. We already have a pilot that is ready to go. It's called My Alberta Digital Identity. We've assessed the province, and we will be accepting their trusted digital identity into federal programs. What that means is that once they've been registered within their province and we have confidence in it, they will be able to immediately access federal services, employment insurance, their tax records. The method that we have today for registration causes a 5 to 10 day delay because we have to do what we call an out-of-band process, mailing something to an individual's home to make sure that it's the real person, but we don't need to do that any longer when we rely on the provincial program. So this is a process. This is just a very high-level view of the value proposition that the pilot, for example, My Alberta Digital Identity, it shows the value of the trust framework that we're developing, but most importantly, it shows value to Canadians that they can do important things quickly and with convenience and confidence. And that's the key thing, is that the most important thing is to have the trust of Canadians. They need to trust these systems, that they are working on their behalf, that they're safe and secure and working in their interest. The Pan-Canadian Trust Framework, it's very detailed. We have just released a major document, which is about 90 pages in length, that goes through all the specifications and all of the trusted processes. I've tried to put everything here on one page. It's showing the key concepts at the top: trusted digital identity of persons, of organizations, and relationships. And then on the left-hand side, we have the trusted processes and criteria that we use to assess the program. So that just gives you an idea of the Pan-Canadian Trust Framework. We also are developing an assessment process, which we are assessing provinces and territories so that we can accept their trusted digital identities. I just wanted to keep the presentation short for the purposes of this. I have more detail. It's posted on GitHub. There's my email address and my Twitter handle. Quite happy to interact with anyone that wants more information. And again, this is a lot of it's fairly new material. Honestly, this is the first time we've actually presented it to a group such as yours via the World Bank. So expect more to come. This is an initial release, if you will. So I will leave it at that and hand it over to the folks that are on the floor there in Mexico City.
Agradecemos a ti su participación. Les pido un aplauso para él.